Mr. President, we are on the verge of fulfilling a promise that we made to the American people. They selected a new majority here in the Senate to repeal Obamacare. In Nebraska, words and promises, well, they still mean something. They are not taken lightly. And trust me, Nebraskans will let you know when you aren't keeping your word. Since the first day that I took office, I've heard from Nebraskans about how this law is making it harder, not easier, for them to get health care. Nearly 20,000 people have contacted my office, and they've expressed their concerns about this law to me. They face a new reality and struggle to afford premiums for plans requiring thousands in out-of-pocket expenses. I've come to the floor many times to share these stories from Nebraskans, and unfortunately, these stories continue to come in. Vivian from Saunders County in the state wrote regarding the deductible on her Obamacare plan, which is so high that her husband, who is a cancer survivor, he's foregoing regular checkups. They simply cannot afford the cost. Kevin from Chapel, Nebraska, he shared his experience with struggling to afford the expensive premium while still facing a $10,000 deductible. He wants answers for why his family is being forced to buy a plan that includes services that they just don't need. Anne, who's from Lincoln, she shared with me her struggle to get coverage for herself and her 2 children. After jumping through bureaucratic hoops to get health care coverage, she is now forced to buy an insurance plan that will take 25% of her income. That's a quarter of her income. Some could argue that these are only anecdotes, a small snapshot of what's happening in the state. But let's look at how premiums have changed in Nebraska since this law was passed. Next year, many Nebraskans will see double-digit increases in their health care costs. In 2014, some Nebraskans saw their premiums go up over 100%. Why are we still debating whether this law has been a success? The president has said, if you like your plan, you can keep it. We've all heard that. Nebraskans were promised they could keep the plans that they liked. Well, tell that to the thousands of people in Nebraska who've lost coverage when Nebraska's co-op failed last year. They were blindsided on Christmas Eve with news that they had to choose a new coverage. Now many more Americans are facing this same challenge as over half of the country's co-ops have failed. Democrats have said this law would help the American people. Americans were promised more. They were promised lower costs for health care. We were promised $2,500 decrease in our insurance costs. Well, clearly that is not the case. This is a mess, and it didn't have to happen. It's now our duty to fix it. I'm proud that Republicans are taking the lead. We are showing the American people our commitment in repealing this law. We can do better. We can provide patient-centered health care. We can let people decide what kind of coverage they need. We can let people take their insurance with them when they move across state lines. We do that with car insurance. But the first step is to end this. A law that costs families more money and it doesn't meet their needs. So I ask, for the sake of all Americans, it's time to take that next step. We need to step up We need to fix this. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.